winding down. Only a couple more weeks left and we will be done. Next week we'll talk about the final paper to kind of summarize the course. But for today we're going to talk a little bit about sexual coercion, right? Forced sex, some of the mechanisms behind it, what we know about it, what to do with it. But to begin off, we're going to talk about a little bit of maybe the nature of sex. I was thinking about that before class. Why are we driven to be so engaged on this aspect of sexual interactions with one another? Right, so as we fundamentally understand sex drive is psychic energy. Right? Thus, we are either expending energy in some way or we are gaining energy in some way. So as nature would have it designed, we are created in a way that is necessary for us to engage in sexual behavior in order to keep the species going. Right? Now, we may disagree with our own egotistical minds about why, how, when, and how much we should engage in behavior. But from a fundamental principle, nature has created this mechanism that we all share in order to facilitate keeping the species intact. So it's for survival, right? Survival of the entire group. Not just the individual, but the entire group as a whole. Now, we would say maybe uncontrolled sexual behavior may have a tendency to be fostered as immature sort of perceptions of participation in anything that we find pleasure in. We understand that human beings move towards pleasure and away from pain, that the pleasure principle, as Freud would kind of talk about, is guiding us to seek the minimal amount of pain through pleasure activities. Right? So we are driven to lose control of ourselves in order to engage in sexual activities, most of us. Because as we know, if we see something of an object of desire, the hypothalamus creates energy. It gives us energy of life to whatever we see as some sense of desire, and when that happens, we lose energy or lose sort of focus and control of our prefrontal cortex, which makes us engage in sexual behaviors almost in an unconscious sort of mechanism. Sex addiction has the same components as any addiction, right? We have that, I think Will even brought up the hedonic sex, hedonic set, right, where we create new norms. If we facilitate engaging in sex in a hypersexual sense, we are even driven more to engage in it in the future. We're creating sort of new normals and new homeostatic balances that we have to fulfill. So the same mechanisms that are create addiction for any sort of substance are created by sexual drives as well too. Some people have introversion or extroversion in sexual engagement, right? Meaning that they receive energy by the sexual interaction themselves, while others feel that the energy is taken away through the sexual activity. Right? So we see this push and pull based on a whole range of factors. We say your personality and your stress levels can create mechanisms to make you facilitate engagement in sexual behaviors. If you are stressed, and you know that sex is one way that you can relieve it, you're more driven to get to drive to that behavior. And then we'll talk about some infidelity and some things as we go along as well too. But let's kind of get into sexual coercion and what that is. All right, so sexual assault and rape, right? Here we're saying it's non-consensual. Previously we talked about a lot of fetishes and behaviors, but they could possibly be consensual. level in terms of how they want to engage with sexual activity. But here we're talking about through force. So we say sexual assault is non-consensual sexual touching, verbally coerced sexual intercourse, right? The use of words and language to coerce, manipulation, deception, and tactics. And physically forced vaginal, oral, or anal penetration. Whereas we say rape is non-consensual sexual penetration that occurs through physical force, threat of bodily harm, when the victim is incapable of giving consent. One could be incapacitated, not even have the ability to give consent. One could be put under duress, right? Threat of bodily harm in order to engage in sexual penetration. Right? So we say the difference is we're talking about penetration specifically with rape, and sexual assault, we're kind of talking about all forms of touching. All right, different types of rape. Could be stranger, could be acquaintance, could be date rape, or it could be statutory. Right? For statutory, we're saying, well, this individual, the law deems not to be mentally capable of making such decisions to engage in sexual activity, thus it would be illegal. Sexual consent, internal state of willingness to engage in sexual activity and or active explicit agreement to engage in sexual activity. Your sexual consent may be active, may be passive, may be verbal or nonverbal. Controversial, right? You're kind of like, well, nonverbal sexual consent. What could that be? What's nonverbal sexual consent? How could sexual consent be nonverbal? You say, okay, maybe nodding, right?
If you're giving into it what the person is giving you, then,
Like the energy,
yeah.
maybe it's
like
energy.
Like you're smiling, like you're making eye contact, you're not
Body
trying
language
You're not
and
trying
such.
to leave.
Alright, they say, all right, body language. We can say energy, but, the interpretation of the energy, right, giver or receiver, could be different. Could be passive, could be active. We would say, hey, there's a fine line here. We don't necessarily know, right? We know when it's clear cut, but if it's an issue anywhere in this area, now we have to kind of examine both parties and say what exactly is happening in terms of communication, whether it's body language or verbal. Then we have our Me Too movement, right? We say it's a political movement to try to shift the narratives of sexual assault victims, perpetrators being held accountable for their actions. We looked at all the sort of sexual deviancies that can occur, in which case maybe women did not report being rubbed up against, being spied on for sexual gratification, being touched when they didn't want to be touched, but kind of changing the whole narrative in our society to bring about awareness and accountability towards malicious or sexual deviance, especially sexual assault and rape. So we saw this with people like Bill Cosby, who was sort of accused of using quaaludes in order to get women to be in a mind state not to really consent about sexual behaviors. Maybe other mechanisms of, perceive men to do in order to facilitate their sexual gratification and may not be consensual. Some false beliefs about rape. Women can't be raped if they don't want to be. Right? We're talking about peer coercion. Could we say manipulation, deception, is a big part of it. One can be easily manipulated to engage in the practice of sex, right? But there's an issue. There's some sort of manipulation of sex. Women say no when they mean yes, right? This sort of mantra that what women are saying may be the opposite of what they're actually feeling. Many women cry rape. What is that? Cry rape? It could be, right? Many women cry rape. Maybe the position here is that, hey, maybe after the fact, the woman may change her mind or something. Right? Because she felt like she was coerced and that she wasn't consensual. Rapists are obviously mentally ill. Right? We say that's not the case all the time. We say part of it could be genetics, right? Genetics is people's inability to control their urges for whatever reason. Right? May not be mental. The behavior could be definitely disordered, but not obviously mentally ill, because these people are functional in society. They have jobs, right? They have families, right? They hold up high levels of positions of power. Male sex drive is so high that men cannot control their sexual urges. He said that's also a false belief, because we all should have the ability to control to some degree when we're engaging in society. If not, then we should be restricted physically. And the last one, men can't be sexually assaulted. A false belief that men are physically more powerful than women, thus they should not be able to experience sexual assault or even be assaulted by maybe another man. All right, psychosocial basis of rape. Rape is frequency is influenced by the nature of relations between sexes, status of women, and stereotypes. Right, that's a factor. So we think of power dynamics. Right, one who holds power over others. Maybe let's say high levels of positions of power. One could feel coerced or manipulated into doing an act of sex in order to receive something, benefit, or the fear of losing something, like a job. Fear of losing something, or being shamed, or guilty or something. I say the media is very impactful, right? Powerful role in transmitting cultural values, norms, heightens acceptance of sexual violence, and likelihood of coercive sex. We've become sort of a hypersexual culture because of social media, movies, music, that we're kind of promoting that sex is something that doesn't even mean much anymore, but it does, especially in the sense that it may be coerced. Changing the narrative of influence in the young minds of young men and young women in terms of accepting sexual violence and participating in sex, even though they may not want to. All right, some characteristics of rapists. We say, hey, rapists have a proclivity towards violence. Right? Rape is about power. Power sometimes is manifested outwardly as violent behaviors. Threats. Characteristics of race also include embracing dominance. Those who have propensity to try to be dominant in other areas, even bullies. Right? Those who bully individuals. Right? right? Those who play on the vulnerabilities of individuals. Looking to see areas of vulnerability and using that as mechanisms to dominate. We can say anger or hatred towards women, right? Hating women for a host of reasons. Maybe the sexual ineptitudes of the man, right? Or the person committing sexual violence. Maybe they're not able to get what they want in dating scenes and intimate relationships. Maybe they're not able to facilitate their own urges in other ways, as I said before. Alcohol may contribute, right? We say alcohol lowers the activity in the prefrontal cortex, which we use to make good, sound decisions and choices. Right? Alcohol also makes us extremely impulsive. We'll just act out what we're feeling without the consequences. Self-centeredness, a little bit of narcissism, right? There's self-centeredness, only concerned about yourself. A little bit of antisocial behavior, only concerned about self. Right? Thus, you have no empathy or concern for the person that you are perpetrating against. And that's part of that exaggerated sense of self-importance. You believe that you're so important that you are entitled to get sex through force from others. Right? There should be no real consequence. Right, but even think on college campuses, if we're talking about when we read these articles of athletes, right, engaging in sexual assault and rape, may be that they have self-entitlement or feel a sense of importance in that particular environment, right, with their college, that they feel that they can get away with, because they also have the support. They feel they have support of others, the team, the coaches, et cetera, et cetera. They have the power, and their victims won't have the power to fight back. Characteristics of rape victims. More than 50% report first rape occurred before 18 years of age. Right? So half of the reported victims say their first experience of being raped was before adult legal age. Poor mental and physical health that comes from the incapability to discern actually probably what's happening and how bad that is, what's occurring. Physical health could be issues with even self-esteem, feeling a low sense of value or self-worth, that you would allow something to happen like that without reporting. Low income and women who abuse drugs, right? Those involved in physically abusive relationships, being dominated by their partner in a domestic sense. Interesting, Native American and Alaska Native women report highest frequency. What do you think that would be the case? Yeah.
When we look at educated folks, I know from going on mission trips to Native Americans or some impoverished Native Americans are able to underserved to say food and like using those spaces that give them like food and shelter and stuff like that. So I would argue that by them being in a closed space where you're not in the best of conditions and you're not, I guess, engaging with the outside world as much, it might cause certain like biological developments to be altered, and I guess that can possibly logical somehow.
Yeah, we say the very nature of the reservations itself create this sort of insular effect that you don't even know the outside world really exists, but you get help, right? Because you're like, really, you're thinking of reservations. Technically, they're not even part of the United States federal system, right? Which means they police their own land. We're not gonna call it the FBI. The FBI has nothing to do with it. Right? So then the reservations are really different countries within the United States. So you think of depending on the resources, and usually not that many great resources, right? You create another sort of barrier to try to express what's going on.
So that of, a lot of them don't have, they're far away enough that they can't, it's when they drive outside of the reservation, there's no police stations or grocery stores and things that would usually be readily available for anybody else. And, the cultural, background of Native Americans specifically, of historically being treated as like second-class citizens for a really long time, and a lot of this new Americans versus Native Americans, and there's not a lot of getting along.
Yeah, so you can say, hey, the cultural aspect of it too. Because we saw even above that poverty, we say, well, if you're in poverty, you feel a sense of less of dominance and control. Now, if you are in another bracket within that poverty, let's say male versus female, if you're a poor female versus a poor male, there may be another substrata of less, right? So we say maybe poor females are in a more vulnerable position than even the poor males, right? Because they're in a different hierarchy within even a low stature in their whole society. And we can say, hey, maybe the culture fosters some sort of submissive behavior, submission to male authoritative figures within the tribes, right? And they could be historical and cultural in some contexts. Yeah, so federal land versus Native American Reserve. What's the only other place in the United States that's technically or legally not part of the U.S.? And that's in New York City. Right, the District of Columbia is still federal land, right? But where else? The United Nations headquarters, right? United Nations, the UN headquarters is not legally part of the U.S. It's part of interglobal sort of area, right? Because you have heads of states coming from one area to delegate their positions. All right, victims' age at the time of first rape. We say the population size taken here was 1,323 female victims. We said of that, 32% were between the ages of 12 and 17. Right? 18-24, 29.4%. And younger than 12 years of age, 22%. And greater 16. So why do you think this particular time frame of age has the highest? What's so unique about this number here, these years? Yeah, they say it's puberty, right? Mentally still vulnerable in some way, but physically showing up as, very close to being adult female, right? So for perpetrators, you say this would be the perfect time, right? Where the form is most desirable, but the mind may not be mature enough, right? To know deceptions, manipulations, rights, wrongs, all sorts of things. Right? Here we say, possibly because this age is less, maybe they will tell. Right? maybe they're not even informed yet, so maybe for the perpetrators, the appeal may not be, or the desire may not be there for that group as much. Okay? Anything above here would say, all right, maybe people are starting to be a little bit more vocal. They'll be expressing to tell what's happening. All right, let's have a discussion question. I think I had to go back. All right, here's one. All right, what is the difference between flirting and harassing? At which point is somebody flirting? At which point is somebody harassing? Okay. How many of you have ever dated someone from school or your job? And you don't have to answer that one too much if you don't want to. How could you tell that the other person was interested? Right, if you have, right, or if you even felt that way, at least tell us, how do you know that they were interested? Non-verbal, was it verbal, was it passive, was it active? What step, if any, did you take to be sure you would not be accused of sexual harassment later? Okay, talking to group. You two could be a group, and then we'll just figure our standard group. One group back to the other one.
I'm so glad I just
Right? I mean, think of this for a second before you start your discussions. Think of a few things. Is it harassment if you're not interested? If you're not attracted to the person? There's an ugly person, right? You like, oh, I may harass. But in the same context, the same environment, situation, but this person's gorgeous, is it no longer harassment to you only because of aesthetics? Because you're attracted or not attracted? Is that switch? Right? Those kind of considerations, think in terms of that. Right?
And so make that argument all the time. They're like, oh, because he's hot and he's this all the time. Girls like, no, because he pulled up and you're like, hey, baby girl, what's up? Can't be at a party.
I just have to respect those ideas.
Yeah.
See where those are at, and maybe like that. That's what everybody's talking about. Like, when you're in such a hard, like, then that's what you're going, you know, like, so, regardless of like that, I'm not interested in whatever you're putting down. I'm not sure what you're putting down. And I ask you to politely go like, then it's harassment.
And how much do traditional roles play in this? Do we say, hey, as a woman, my expectation is that the man doesn't approach me? It's not gonna happen. There's not gonna be a date, right? If I'm not asked, right? Maybe verbal. If I'm not given some sort of inclination or energy that they're interested in, right? So think of almost that, like a lot of this stuff happens with, you know, the vulnerabilities of fear and the results and consequences of approaching someone that are kind of foster these sorts of things.
be like, what are you doing? So, you know, different contexts allow for, you know, stronger or deeper approaches to,
That's a disaster. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
All right, let's see what we get. What's the difference between flirting and harassing? What are your thoughts? So a clear disregard for the other person's uninterested motivations, right? You're not interested. Okay. You say the same thing? So, okay, well, I don't know. How many of you ever dated someone screwed your job? Has that occurred? Could you tell, how could you tell that they were interested?
Well, it depends, it has a lot of factors, but from my experience, some people pay, so they can pursue their career. And they didn't say you do this harassment because
So it's like they take small incremental steps to kind of test to see the interest, right? Now, is that, you find that that's better or worse? Is it, your opinion, is it better for someone who's interested to just come out and like approach one and done? Or is it more appropriate to kind of test and see little by little what the person's interested in?
yeah, first thing I want to do is, you know, for long, like, oh,
Yeah. That could be taken almost more as some form of harassment if it's not a person you're interested in, right? Makes it more uncomfortable. Yeah, off-putting. Now you're kind of like, well, now we can't have any sort of interaction because you made it weird, right? As opposed to maybe if you're flirtatious, you're like, oh, I can just make attempts, but not make it weird. Well, we still can communicate with something. Okay, what steps, if any, did you take to be sure you will not be accused of them, or you will not be accused of sexual harassment? Just expressing someone needed clear cut. Okay. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, we kind of said a little of the same thing, where it's like flirting, harassing. If you show a disinterest, you're not flirting back, then they should definitely stop. Even regardless of if like I'm attracted to you or not, if I'm not reciprocating the same energy back to you, then it'll turn into a harassment sort of situation. Because now I'm like, okay, you just keep coming at me, I've already showed my disinterest. You kept going, and then I said, okay, you need to stop, and they kept going, and that's harassment.
So as we saw some of the mechanisms of kind of like that narcissistic behavior, to where it's kind of like, hey, you show this interest, but the person doesn't care, right? They're more about their own self-serving interest to keep initiating.
I'm gonna make you.
Yeah, I'm going to coerce you
Yeah.
into engaging with me. For example.
Yeah, and then we were saying also how with flirting and harassment, like maybe if you're like at a bar or something, like if you know they just like put your hair out of your face or something, that can be seen as flirting. Whereas like they're trying to drag you to the next room, or they're like trying to grope your thigh, and like
Yeah.
there's certain boundaries that need to be set between flirting and harassing, because
Yeah.
then it's like
Physical
it's
touch,
too much.
unwanted physical touch.
Yeah, then it's like a little bit too much, and obviously if we're at a bar or something, guys probably won't be able to tell. Guys or women won't be able to tell if they're harassing someone because they're probably intoxicated.
So most of the time it's probably gonna be harassment without them realizing it, unfortunately. I've never dated someone, I don't know, from school or job,
No,
yeah,
it's
I always
bad
felt like,
idea.
yeah, I
Bad
always felt like it's a
idea
really bad
overall.
idea, cause it could just end terribly, cause then, like one of the quotes, woman cried rape, like after the fact, like, he ended up cheating, and now you're threatening his job and your job and future jobs for all I know. So it's just, I feel like it's just a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
If it ends badly, yeah.
Yeah, because you always have this feeling that, oh, this person got rejected. I know that
Right.
they probably feel the way that I reject. Yes, something that?
Nope.
There?
And I'm not good at this stuff. I don't know, it's hard to tell. I'm not good at it.
Thoughts?
We kind of talked about like how it's definitely about like body language and environment because I kind of like related it to like someone who's in a relationship with someone who isn't. Where it's like if you aren't, like you might be looking for a relationship and you might be looking to flirt with someone, but there's also certain boundaries that can be crossed where it can turn into harassment. Kind of like the previous group said, like when you instantly put up a boundary where you said no and they continue, you just kind of have to really like differentiate when does no like actually mean no, or is it like kind of like a flirtatious no where it's like you're kind of playing hard to get.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, yeah, kind of like that.
Do you find that a lot of times this stuff is misinterpreted? Like, you think that people are flirting and they're not, or the opposite, right?
Yeah.
You think that people are not flirting when really they are. So you find out.
Yeah.
All right. We'll have one more discussion question after this.
Just say it. Just come on and say it. Yeah.
No, I think I'd rather have, cause I wanna warm up to you first, let's be friends.
Yeah, being friends first, and that's how you actually cultivate a real relationship. If you like someone, you just say it.
So you think it's better to be friends first and then gradually move into?
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like it's so weird to approach somebody because you want to date them. Like, at that point, you don't even know them, you just know them by their looks. So it makes so much more sense, like, you see this person and they seem cool and you want to be their friend, and then if you start developing feelings, then that's when you come out and you're blunt about it.
Yeah. So you'd be like, well, sex is such an intimate act and powerful act. It's probably not best to start out in the pursuance of that, right?
Mhm.
Or to start in the pursuance of personality, who you are, what you're about. Then later add that on. Okay. Acquaintance, rape, and sexual coercion. Rapes committed by someone who is known to the victim occur in 3 out of 4 rapes. So 75% of rapes are committed by someone that the victim knows. Why do you think this is a big advocate?
Kind of back to that chart that you showed us between ages of 12 and 17. Usually it might be like a family friend or like an uncle or aunt who's seeing someone come of age and they're like, oh, like you look completely different now. You grew, you have your curves now, something like that, and it ends up turning into rape, unfortunately.
Yeah. You say comfort comes from familiarity, right? And most crimes are in group, usually whatever group that is. We see racial crimes are usually committed black on black, white on white, Hispanic to Hispanic, Arab to Arab, Asian to Asian. Like, why is that a big thing? There's a comfort and familiarity with the group itself that leads a person to act out their urges to feel within the group. Both women and men report some form of coercive sexual activity, can be verbal or physical, right? What about for men? What do you think? Coercive sexual activity towards men. What are some things you think kind of happen out there in which women try to coerce men? Yes.
Probably like high school. Like it's a woman teacher, a female teacher, and she's attracted to a young guy, and she asks him to stay after class or something, or
Yeah, so we say the same mechanisms. Hey, you're being groomed, you're being deceived, manipulated into something by someone, or you may be the threat of losing something, right? Kicked out of school, losing your job, something of the sort, even if you are a man. And there may be less reporting. It's like, well, in a social context, most men might think that it's a form of weakness, right, to express that they were raped by a woman or something. Acquaintance of rape, again, the role of perceptions in communication, usually sexual scripts, right? Misinterpretations, ambiguity, poor communication, the man feels led on. Right? Here we say, hey, we have a biopsychosocial phenomenon because women are more emotionally intelligent. Right? They're more emotionally expressive. They understand emotions more. They pick up more on body language than men do. They can see the cues. Right? Men not so much. Right? And so there can be misinterpretations. Right? Misinterpretations. Can be ambiguity, could be poor communication. Right? Which, doesn't justify any of this, of course, but that could be sort of the mantra used by the perpetrator. Date rape drugs, used to facilitate sexual conquest or to incapacitate victims, right? Rohypnol, gamma hydroxyturate, ketamine hydrochloride. So things that can be dropped into an alcoholic beverage at a bar really quickly, things that can be put in food to incapacitate, to make one lethargic, unconscious, etc. Rape has been a strategy or policy of war throughout history. Right? Usually in war, the men are murdered and killed, the women are raped, right? And usually the children are killed too. Children are usually killed if it's a male, right? So that there's no retribution to come back with vengeance. And usually the women are pillaged and impregnated to create a whole new line of children, right, by the victims. So mostly the thought process here was that the women in the society were deemed the most valuable aspect of the society. That's why there would be humiliation. Right? Women would be the highest facilitator of dominance and control. Whoever controlled the women controlled the bloodline in the progress. Right? And also with that, we say part of that destroying familial and societal bonds. Those who raped and pillaged did not want those bloodlines to continue, so they came and mixed them up with their own bloodlines. And obviously to terrorize and demoralize the population. Because think if you came into a village and let's say a lot of the women were even married, right? And now you rape them and force them to have sex. You have demoralized even the men in that country, right? Now you can move on, but you still may have all these married women, girlfriends, whatever, who have been raped with pillages. Now you have to deal with that trauma too, right? So it basically destabilizes the morality of the population. Alright, sexual assault can be traumatic and have long-term repercussions, right? Those can feel shame, shameful that the act occurred. Those can feel anger, right? Want vengeance. Fear that it'll happen again. Fear of what will happen if they told someone, right? The person come back and kill them. What they, sort of lie about it. Powerlessness, right? Taking possession of one's body is the highest form of disrespect, right? Your body is your own, even beyond your mind. And then self-blame, right? Coping mechanism. Coping mechanism, we say, hey, we still have to cope with this trauma. One way is to blame yourself. To give a reason. Because we say the mind, we love meaning. We gravitate towards coming up with a meaning. Even for this inaccurate meaning, we'll create one to cope. Physical symptoms, headaches, anxiety, nausea, frequently occur, PTSD, right? We say reliving the experience over and over, right? At random periods of time. And obviously counseling. I used to do work in South Africa. I did it with the townships that are in the townships. Could be as large as like 2 million people. They're shanty towns, right? And so you figure 12, 15 people living in a shack, random people, you know, mom may have boyfriends hanging out, right? Very impoverished areas. So the young women were facing the most trauma, which means that a lot of them had been sexually assaulted while the female parent was there, but other people in the shack. So I had to listen to a lot of this stuff from 9, 10, 12, 13-year-old girls about how they were raped going to school and how this was the second time this school got to do it. And this was like a weekly occurrence. So yes, young female populations usually are the most vulnerable between that age of people. Majority of sexual assault victims are women, but men also targets of rape. Right? We said men are less likely to report it. Rape of males may be perpetrated by heterosexual men, right? Often with one or more cohorts. Gay men, prison inmates, and prisoners of war are more likely to be raped. Right? For a host of reasons. One could be dominance and manipulation, humiliation, once again. Maybe the perpetrators don't even really like the act, but they like the sense of power and dominance of the act. Maybe they feel it's a way to feminize the victims of something. Sexual harassment, unwanted sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature in the workplace and academic setting, right? These are prohibited by Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Two types, right? This for that, quid pro quo, right? You do this, I can do that. Or we say hostile or offensive environment. Varieties and incidents of sexual harassment on the job can start with remarks, comments, violation of personal space, etc. Anyone here ever felt like they've been sexually harassed in any sort of capacity? Whether it be on the job, work. Right? Starts off with small little remarks and comments. Prevalence of sexual harassment in the workplace. Reduction in claims, many incidents go unreported. And then same-sex sexual harassment in the workplace, recent increase in claims. Right, so we see an increase in female-to-female sexual harassment, male-to-male sexual harassment. And can seriously erode financial status, job performance, job satisfaction, career opportunities, psychological and physical health, and personal relationships of the victim. We got one more question and we get out of here. All right, here's one. Is someone under the influence of alcohol or drugs capable of giving consent? What if both parties are intoxicated? How would you know someone was under the influence of alcohol or drugs? drugs, or of legal age consent. Let's start with focusing on these. Is someone under the influence of alcohol or drugs capable of giving consent? What if both parties are intoxicated? What do these answers suggest for individuals who want to avoid being accused of rape? Think of that you're in that position. You're like, hey, two people at a bar, both get wasted, and sex happens, and later on is accused of rape. What do we do about this? How do we know that this happened? So let's get into our groups once again to discuss this.
From our Title IX training, we know that people under the influence of alcohol or drugs cannot give consent. Unconscious people do not want to. They make you watch those videos in middle school. Unconscious people don't want to. Really. It's supposed to be like a metaphor for that sexual assault. Like, you don't, because the person who was unconscious can't ask for tea, they just ask for tea, they don't want tea. Yeah, you can't give unconscious people do not want tea.
That's a good way to teach options.
Weird. So, the hot topic, both parties are intoxicated. We'll talk about that. In a legal way or a moral way? Both. And pressing charges against.
They would have to. They would have to, someone would have to. I had every right to trust me, because I wasn't able to do this either. So I think,
I'm sure it's an important case. Of something like that. I just wanted to know what it's called.
Because there's no such thing as, like, oh, well, I had more drugs than you, so I was more drunk. It's
Right.
no, because it's different for everyone. No, I was just intoxicated because you were, you were so much of it.
Right.
And I'm not.
What do you guys think?
Because I'm first, then what? You can do it. You said that. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm up for, I don't know.
What are your thoughts? Right? Go to a bar. People at bars drink. That's what people at bars do. Right? Some people know their limits, others don't. Some people may have ate food before they went, others may have not, right? We say that's a factor as well too. Some people have lower body weights, which could get them more tipsy quicker. Some people have bigger body weights, right? So there's a lot of factors to be considered. So what are your thoughts? Someone under the influence of alcohol or drugs capable of giving consent, and what are both of them not intoxicated? So under the influence, you can give consent. You're not in your right mind. We just said biologically, right? The prefrontal cortex slows down, is inhibited, which creates your decision and choice making, right? So when you're intoxicated with alcohol, this part of your brain slows down. So you can't make a good decision, right? Biologically. If both people are So if both people under the influence, the next day they had sex, you're saying nobody can claim rape? They both, you're saying they both can claim it?
It's
Two
also,
people claim it?
it's also for someone's like more intoxicated, there's that issue.
Yeah. Alright, interesting. Okay.
So, one, we know by our Title IX training, you cannot, people who are under the influence of alcohol and drugs cannot give consent, that's a given. We were thinking that if both parties are intoxicated and they end up having sex, then there could be a situation in which if one person were to say that they were assaulted that night, then there's reason for the other person to also say that they were assaulted too. So it's like, if neither one of them press charges, then it's just kind of, okay, that happened, it wasn't a good decision, but, mutually, we understand it. But if one person were to say that, then the other person would have it in their legal right to also say that they were taken advantage of either. And however way that works out, like if it's, if both of them end up getting charged individually for irresponsible sex, I don't know if that's a thing, then that's something that could happen.
You would say like I was more drunk than you were, or you can't really test that, can you? So
Yeah.
if both of you were seen drinking, that's some charges too.
Don't forget, we have rape kids, right? So they have to go get tested to see the actual force, like force penetration. Your body will show if you have been restricting, accepting having sexual intercourse versus like tearing your things. What do you think?
I kind of agree with the other groups. It's like, obviously, if it's like one person's under the influence and they're trying to have sex but they can't consent, so that's something you can do. I think the second, kind of like situation is a little bit confusing and kind of like really weird because it's like you have two individuals who are under the influence and they have sex, and I feel like you could like if one of them wanted to cry rape, you can also cry rape as well. And just be like, hey, we're both taking advantage of each other.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it's kind of a weird situation because what were the stages that got you guys to that point in a sense? Like how well do you know each other?
Yeah, some other factors may come into play. But overall, it's kind of neutralize the argument
Yeah.
if all other things are considered.
Yeah.
Are there rape kits for men? Like, is there a way to tell if, because it could easily have also been like the woman, she didn't do anything that night, but the male was obviously intoxicated, and she brought him back to her house, whatever, had sex with him while he wasn't conscious. Like, would there be any way of proving that?
Not necessarily if you're talking about a penis, but if we're
Yeah.
talking about
If it
a
was
man
male,
being
female.
raped,
Yeah.
to his rectum or anus, yes,
Right.
you could tell that.
But no way for like a male.
Not necessarily. All right, that's it for today. We'll talk more about that final paper next week.